Well, a week and a half ago, a group of 72 from the Diocese of Lexington, made up mostly of teenagers and 20-somethings, several chaperones, 3 deacons, including yours truly, Father Frank Bronner and Bishop Ronald Gaynor, returned to town after 2.5 weeks in New Zealand and Australia for World Youth Day. And before anybody gets the wrong impression, this was no vacation. It truly was a pilgrimage. Now, the dictionary defines a pilgrimage as a long journey to some sacred place as an act of religious devotion. Let me add to that, from my experiences down under, and say that a pilgrimage is sort of like climbing the hill to Calvary while emerging gloriously from the tomb of self-absorption. In a weird way, you kind of pass yourself in the process. It's also a rejection of the world while embracing all that's good within it. And it's mostly for people younger than me. Did you catch the part where I said it's a long journey? It took us 45 hours and 3 airlines to get to Auckland, New Zealand. A gorgeous country, clean and green, even in the dead of winter, which they're going through right now. Where the trees don't lose their leaves, and they have hundreds of native plants that I had no idea I was allergic to. We spent nearly a week with host families in St. Joseph of Takapuna Parish. And that was sort of like a warm-up to World Youth Day, called Days in the Diocese. And while we were there, we worked on service projects, including cleaning up the old Catholic cemetery with youth from the parish, who we got to know on the 4-mile hike there. Our bishop made it too, family and all. We attended workshops, made many pilgrimages to the various diocesan sites of interest, and got together with the other 2,500 pilgrims who were there from around the world, who were also participating in Days in the Diocese. We ate, slept, walked, worked, and worshipped daily with our Kiwi hosts. That's what New Zealanders like to call themselves. We put our very selves into it, but we got so much more out of it, which is the basic idea of a pilgrimage. We were graced with the warm welcome and hospitality of total strangers who quickly became close friends. We forged a permanent bond between our diocese and theirs. And our young people got a fantastic foretaste of what the universality of Catholicism is all about. They saw firsthand that you could travel halfway around the world and still attend the same liturgy, with the same readings, the same teaching, the same beliefs. Now, our stay in New Zealand was merely the appetizer for the main course in Australia. We arrived in Sydney on a Monday evening and were driven by bus to our lodgings on breathtaking Bondi Beach, which is somewhere east of downtown Sydney. I looked around and I thought, whoa, this is nice. This will be a breeze. Then we entered Noah's Backpackers Hostel on the hill above the beach, and I learned that the sacrificial essence of pilgrimage had really just begun. Just to clue you in on what a backpacker's hostel is, it's apparently a building with too many rooms, too many beds, and too many floors, with no elevators, broken furniture, cold and dark communal toilets, and sparse garret lighting. I would say that it is a place that's perhaps too seedy to make it as a house of filled repute. Cindy, Father Frank, and I decided that first night, very prudently, that we would only walk on the carpeting in our rooms in our shoes and flip-flops. But after morning prayer the next day, we boarded city buses and went downtown to hook up with 250,000 very energetic, exuberant youth. And then we all marched en masse a couple of miles through the downtown area and onto this massive pier in Sydney Harbor called Barangaroo for opening mass and for a concert. It was the official start of World Youth Day and, for what it's worth, the official start of the flu symptoms that started worming their way through our group and many others. Fortunately, most of those infected, myself included, only spent a couple of days therapeutically treating our symptoms, though two of us, including Joan Root, our pilgrimage leader, wound up in the hospital. But it could have been worse. There was one hospital there with 300 that reported 236 cases of flu. Well, the week was filled with daily catechesis at a local parish given to us by all of the visiting bishops, including ours. There were masses, concerts, prayer sessions, and of course the Pope entering Sydney Harbor by ship on Thursday, then winding around the city in his Pope-mobile, while thousands waved at him, thronging and clogging all of the streets in downtown Sydney. Then on Friday, we all went back to Barangaroo for Stations of the Cross, which actually took place at various locations throughout the city. It took about 3.5 hours. And it finished up, actually, where we were with 3 simulated live crucifixions. Unfortunately, for me, that is, I was rapidly getting sick, and so I took a bus back to Bondi Beach, and I got a flu prescription because the pharmacist there can prescribe things for you. And I went to bed. I also missed the 6-mile hike through Sydney to Randwick Racecourse the next day, where all the pilgrims would bend down under the stars Saturday night, and where the Pope would celebrate final Mass on Sunday morning. However, I swore to myself that I would make it if I had to crawl there. Luckily, Joan Root was released from the hospital Saturday afternoon, and she, her husband, Deacon Paul Root, and I caught a bus at 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday and made it to Randwick Racecourse. It was surreal. It was like walking through one of those apocalyptic movie sets where entire cities are evacuated and put into these enormous refugee camps. But, you know, we found our group with very few problems. God is good. Now, I mentioned earlier that the basic idea of a pilgrimage is to put your very self into it to get even more out of it. And the payoff, for me anyway, happened at the Papal Mass. Now, as clergy, the 3 deacons, Richard Watson of St. Luke's in Nicholasville, Paul Root of Christ the King, and me, along with Father Frank, were invited to bring alms and stoles. And we had to apply for clergy passes so that we could sit in special sections reserved near the huge platform that served as the sanctuary for the Papal Mass. So, we decided to go up and find our seats early, getting 3rd row. And we were very happy until we found out it was reserved just for the priests. Well, we noticed that there was this very tall and bossy master of ceremonies running up and down the bench row near us. So we went over and asked him where the deacons should be. He said, "Your deacons, follow me." We took us to this little corral-like place where there were about 3 dozen other deacons. But it just so happened that it was right next to the place where the Pope-mobile stopped and Benedict XVI got out. I mean, just a few feet from us, so he could vest for Mass in the little tent that was right next to us. I'm thinking, if I ever do have grandchildren, this goes on the list of things to tell them about. Yeah.